Hello, today we are talking about how we paid off $20,000 of debt in 5 years on $22,000 a year income.
We're going to tell that whole story? That's kind of a big story.
We'll give the condensed version.
Okay.
Please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you can be notified when we put up new videos. Hello, I am Tara, the author of the Dining on a Dime cookbook, where you can eat better, spend less. We have a new hardcover with full color pictures and over 1,200 recipes and tips to help you save money on your grocery bill. Check it out at livingonadime.com. Hello, guys! So, today we are talking about our debt and how we got out of debt. Now, one reason why Mike and I are so anti-debt is because
it was really hard.
It was really hard. So when we got married, Mike had $3,000 on his credit card. I had $5,000 that I owed Mom that I bought a car with and borrowed the money from her. And so we had debt when we got married. Now we're doing a series on debt and how to get out of debt.
And it will be step by step.
Yes.
But we're going to start with a kind of a version of what we did first.
Of our story first, so you can kind of get a background so that you know we have not always been debt-free. But being debt-free is great. I mean, it just feels absolutely wonderful. So,
well, and the truth is, even though I say it was really, really hard, once we actually started it and once we sort of figured out a plan, it was a lot less hard. We just had to keep doing the plan. And that's one thing we're going to try to be telling you guys in the series of the step-by-step series is how to keep moving forward.
Yeah. All right. So we got married.
Sorry, before we get, I would just say my situation, I referred to it before in a number of other videos, but when I was in college, I worked a job. I was spending all the money for my job, and they told me I deserve good things for myself and sign up for this credit card. And I was stupid, and I agreed, and I went and did that, and I charged up a lot of things. But there was a point where before I met Tara, I realized this is a problem. I really have to get this under control. I've got this debt, and I have to pay it back, and I already ate all the stuff I bought with it. And so I got another credit card to try with a lower interest rate to try to pay that off. But almost right away, I totally charged up the other credit card too. So going into this, it's important to understand.
We've been there,
but you need to get a grip on that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you got to get it together. And so what we did was
actually, sorry, I have one other story to tell. I'll tell you where I really realized I was in trouble. I had charged up the second credit card too, and I was just thinking, oh, I feel awful. I've spent so much more money than I'm making, and I'm making plenty of money since I don't really have a lot of bills at this point. And so there's no reason I should be in this much debt, but I am, and I don't understand what to do. And one day I just thought, I'm so stressed out. I think I'm just going to go buy a Nintendo because I can just play it instead of going out and spending money doing other things. And it'll be a good investment because I'll buy the Nintendo and then I won't have to spend any more money and I can pay off my credit cards. Well, when I bought the Nintendo, it totally maxed the second card. And I went home and I unpacked the box and I started to try to play a game, and I wasn't hardly into it at all. And I just had this overwhelming sense of guilt. So I carefully put it all back in the box and I took it back to the store, and they said, oh yeah, sure, we'll take it back. Is there anything wrong with it? And I said, no. I said, I just realized I can't afford it. So that was the beginning in my mind of really having a sense of the urgency of getting out of debt.
Yeah. So when we got married, I made in no uncertain terms that debt was not going to be a part of our lives. And Mike, he wasn't real happy about that at first, but
I agreed.
He agreed. But you know me and my personality, I'm not the most tactful person.
Oh, thank you.
So I was kind of like, there's no way we're having credit card debt. It ain't happening. And so...
Well, and... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you again, but I agreed with her that was the case. But when it actually came to stop spending, I really wasn't happy about stop spending, and I kept thinking. I was trying to balance it myself, like an alcoholic, trying to have just one or two drinks instead of a whole bunch of drinks, and so I was charging going to the movies, and I was charging photography because I really liked photography, like getting film developed and buying film. And Tara pretty much said, when we got married, this all has to stop until we get this under control. And I knew she was right, but I wasn't happy about it. So unfortunately, I know some spouses are not really cooperative, but I knew she was right, and I was trying my best not to complain too much. And occasionally I would still sneak over to McDonald's and buy myself something.
Oh, now you confess.
But I was really very small on that because I realized, okay, this is really a bad idea. And
Do you feel better now
I really
that you
want to do
confessed
the
that?
right thing here.
Do you feel better now?
Yes, confession is good for the soul.
So here's what we did. So we had $3,000 in credit card debt. Mom's car, I wasn't paying her anything. We had got an insurance payout for a car accident, and so that was the money that I had used. So it wasn't like I was taking, well, I was taking money from Mom, but she said, just go ahead and get your credit cards paid off first. So that's what we focused on.
Just to be clear, when she says we got an insurance payout, she means
Oh yeah, we had a really bad car accident, and
like her and her mom, not me.
me and my mom had a really bad car accident several years earlier, and we had been fighting with the insurance agent or the insurance company for pain and suffering. And so we got a payout for that. It wasn't huge. I mean, I think it was something like $8,000 or $10,000. It wasn't a huge amount by any stretch of the imagination. But she loaned me $5,000 for that
So
to buy the car.
So that didn't help. That wasn't contributing to paying off the debt that I brought.
Yeah.
When we got married.
So anyway, the $3,000 that he had, as soon as we got married, I was like, okay, we have to be paying this off. It was like 26% interest or something. It was ridiculous. And I said, we'll never get this paid off. So each month we started paying, and I mean, it was like $5 a month more, but we were putting it on. And then after 2 or 3 months, we got an offer from a credit card company, and it said 0% interest if you transfer your balance.
Well, first it was like 6.9% interest, and then it was 5.9, and then
you're right.
Something, and then we started getting 0%.
Yeah. So he's right. First it was 6.9, and I said, well, wait a minute, we're paying like, I don't know, 26 or whatever percent it was, and this is 6.9. Let's transfer the balance. And Mike's like, I don't want another credit card. I
was thinking, I don't want to do that because I already tried that, and look where we are now.
But I said, no. I said, what we'll do is we'll transfer it, and then we'll close the other card. So we don't have any more cards, but then we'll have 6%. So now we can start getting ahead on our credit card payments and paying it off. Well, so then it snowballed, and then we got a 2.9%, and then we started getting 0% about, 7 or 8 months after we were married and started paying this off. We got 0%.
And we weren't paying it off very fast, but we were paying the maximum we thought we could on the teensy tiny income we had.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had a college degree, and I had no idea how to get a job in my field.
Yeah.
So I was working, not making very much. Tara she wasn't doing well at all after we got married.
I was really sick. Well, come to find out, so that house that had the water running through it, it had a lot of mold. And I didn't know it at the time, but I'm allergic to mold. And so I was really super sick living at that house. And I was almost bedridden. And it was kind of funny because I would go, and I don't know how I did it, but I finally got a job working just like 4 or 5 hours a week at a greenhouse down the hill. And that I was really sick too, and I only lasted there a couple of months, but I kept trying to work. I couldn't work, and I was horribly, horribly sick. Well, come to find out, that apartment had black mold, and I was really sick. So it was just basically his income and my $300 disability.
Well, and it continued that way because I was trying to get jobs, and I worked for a lot of temporary places. So this is the thing I'm saying is everyone has problems when they're trying to pay off debt, but you just have to keep plowing through it anyway. So we were trying to pay off the debt, but we also I was working at a job that didn't pay very much. Tar wasn't working at all a lot of the time. And finally, it just came to me. I thought, I have to do something that's going to pay more. And I had a degree in film and television production, and I had worked doing movies for no charge. And I talked to some people I knew, and I thought we can go to Texas, and I will be able to do that and make more money. Well, we did move, and I I was having a great deal of difficulty, partly because I was just terrified because of how I had grown up to step out there and actually, ask for it, but also because I think I overestimated the probability of getting a job doing that and getting
Yeah.
paid. So I ended up working for a restaurant and then a grocery store where I had worked growing up. But during that time, Texas wasn't good for Tara, and she worked some, but mostly
Yeah, a
was
couple weeks.
practically dead the whole 6 months.
Yeah, because of the heat and humidity. And so during that time, we kept putting as much as we could on the credit cards. Now, we're going to tell more of our personal story later, but I'm just going to give you kind of a brief overview of some of the things that caused us to have $20,000 in debt. So we had the $3,000 when he started, and then we moved to Idaho, and we didn't have a way to pay for that, so we had to put that on the credit cards, and that was about $1,000 for us to move to Idaho from Texas. And then Mike crashed drove a car over the cliff, and that was another $2,500. And then
And there was no insurance payment on that, by the way.
yeah, we only had liability.
The deer didn't have insurance.
Yeah. We only had liability, and a deer ran out in front of him, and he
I didn't
slid
hit
off
it,
the road.
so that's good at least.
No, it's not.
No, I should have hit it.
You
Well, I
should've
hate to
hit it
say
and
it.
could have had dinner.
I didn't want to hurt poor Bambi, but at the same time, the insurance company gave me a lot of grief, and so did the police because I didn't actually hit the deer.
Yeah. So he slid off the side of the road and went into a creek, and so we had $2,500 that we needed to buy another car, and then our daughter was born, and she had to be flight for life because she had a hole in her lung, and she was born in a teensy tiny, literally 10-bed hospital out in no man's land, Idaho, and she had a hole in her lung, and she had to be flight for life to Spokane when she was born, and that the insurance did not pay for that.
They refused to pay for Flight for Life, even though all the doctors agreed that she was going to die.
Yeah. And so we put that $12,000 on our credit cards because that was 0%. We were still transferring for 0%. So this is all over the span of 5 years. So just so you guys know, this is all over the span of 5 years. But we ended up putting the $12,000 on a credit card, and then we had 2 moves in between also that we didn't have money to pay for, and so that was another $2,500 or $3,000, and so altogether we ended up with about $20,000 of debt over 5 years. Now, this entire time, we did keep paying on it, and I will tell you
more than the minimum payment. As much as we could.
And I will tell you, it was extremely frustrating. Like, we literally had just gotten the card paid off, and then our daughter was born, and we were right back into debt again with $12,000. And we had literally just gotten Mike's $3,000 paid off, and he drove the car over the cliff. And so it was extremely frustrating. We kept getting 0% offers, so I kept transferring them to 0% every 6 months. I would transfer it to the different credit card, and it ended up to where I had 2 to 3 credit cards that we would transfer from, and they kept sending me offers because they wanted our business back. And so in the end, we weren't getting new credit cards. It was just transferring between the 3, but it was very frustrating the whole time. For the majority of that time, you never made more than $6 an hour. And then finally, towards the end, you started making $15 an hour.
Yeah, before our son was born. Well, we'd been married 3
years, yeah,
almost
3.5 years.
Almost 3 years. Well,
yeah, 3 years.
We'd been married 3 years when he was born, but a little while before that, I got a job that paid significantly better, but it was $15 an hour, which we thought we were practically rich then.
And he had to drive 100 miles each way to work every day.
Yeah. So the situation with our daughter, I was working that job at that time, but we were unclear. They were kind of sketchy about how permanent the job was.
Yeah.
So we were being extra cautious of what if this job goes away? Let's bank everything we can and pay off. And as far as saving versus paying off debt, we do highly recommend saving and having an emergency fund. But at that time, we were thinking, well, gee, let's just pay it off because worst that'll happen is we'll be back on 0% again. But if we pay it off and somehow things go great, then we won't have to be back into debt again.
Yeah.
It was a learning
Yeah.
process. It really
Yeah.
was.
So for us, it took us 5 years and 0% credit cards. And that is how we finally got out of debt. Eventually, it got to the point where we just had to make more money, period. And that's going to be a whole nother part of our story that we'll talk about. But I just kind of wanted to give you guys kind of the general idea of how our debt was, how we paid it off. And one thing that helped Mike really well with the debt, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in depth, was when we were in Texas trying to pay off the debt. This would have been 6 months after we were married. He made up a chart. And back then we didn't have QuickBooks. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have any of these fancy
It was on paper with a
charts.
pencil.
It was on papers. And he made a chart, and I remember you sitting at the table drawing it out.
And I basically said, here's how much debt we have. Here's how much we think we're going to pay each month. I put marks at the points, and I made a line showing the expected payoff.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to predict the expected payoff date because my mind thinks very visually. And I was thinking, at least if I know what we're going for, it will feel less frustrating.
And you could see we were making progress.
Yeah. But as we actually paid the debt, it gave me the urgency to think, like I mentioned, oh, well, I still occasionally would go to McDonald's or something, sometimes not till dark. Well, it would give me the inspiration to not spend those things because I would think, whoa, I really want to meet that goal this month. And it turned out that every month we beat the goal significantly.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Yeah.
also didn't anticipate the whole snowball effect where we were able to pay it off faster and faster
Yeah.
as we got things
And
paid
any
down.
extra money we would get, we would put on debt payoff. So like we would go dumpster diving, and then we would have a garage sale with the dumpster dive fines. And that $200 would go to pay on our credit cards. Or we would go garage selling. Like at one point we lived in a college town, and they had, in May when all the kids were leaving, they had garage sales that were ridiculous, like brand new blenders for $1.
So
Brand
we would
new
wait
toasters.
and buy things at those occasions and hold off on buying them because we want it today.
Yeah. And so we pretty much did not, we drove older cars.
Super cheap cars back then because it's
Super
all we
cheap.
really could swim.
Yeah. Well, only $1,000 or so. And even you guys will say, oh, that was 25 years ago. It was, but $1,000 car, even 25 years ago.
It's about the same as a $1,000 car now.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was maybe a $2,000 car now, a $2,500 car now. But, it was a pretty cheap car. We bought everything at garage sales. We really bought nothing new. No new furniture, no new clothes. I got Mike and I new underwear, but everything for the kids, underwear, everything, I would just bring it home and bleach it. Everything was used.
And we also learned to entertain ourselves for no cost.
Yeah.
So Tara liked gardening, but we didn't really want to spend money on it. So we would find, oh, hey,
Freeways.
there's wood chips there.
Mhm.
I wonder if they're getting rid of them. And they would say, we're just going to throw them away. If you want them, take them. And then somebody would say, I'm going to tear out all this rhubarb in my garden because I hate rhubarb and there's all over the place. And we would say, hey, can we have a little bit of it?
Yeah. Or we'd see plants dumped by the dumpster or something, and we'd go pick them up and revive them.
So we did gardening for 100% free.
Yeah.
Doing all that. And other things we also did for little or nothing because we would find things instead of spending money.
Yeah.
Or we would learn skills instead of spending money. Like one time we had a pipe burst in the wintertime because neither one of us had any idea
We had no money.
You had to winterize an outside faucet at your house. And we had no money. Nobody would come to do it. And I just realized I have to do this. And it was, I had no idea how, but necessity is the mother of invention. We did not want to have any more debt.
Yeah. And, our grocery bill was $25 a week. And you'll say, oh, well, that was 25 years ago. Okay, yeah, it was. But that would be like $50 a week now. How many people would live for 2 people or even 4? At the time, we had 4 people. We were still doing that for years. $25 a week for like 10 years.
Was that when we were buying the new Tramagen?
Yeah. And I didn't count that in our grocery budget, but that was our $250 formula budget for our daughter. But our regular budget for groceries was $20 to $25 a week. And if we didn't have the money, I had to figure out what we had on hand, and
we just didn't buy
we
it.
didn't buy it. We didn't go to the grocery store and just put it on the credit cards if we didn't have the money for it. If we busted a pair of shoes, well, we would go to the thrift store and try and find a new pair of shoes. And if it was more than $2 for that pair of shoes, we wouldn't buy it. And so we were really, really tight. And living on $6 an hour and then $15 an hour, we had to be. But my point is, we were still paying off our debt, even at $6 an hour, and then later $6 an hour for 2 people, and then $15 an hour for 4 when we had the 2 kids. But
well, and the other thing is we had to come to a certain mindset at one point, because as you heard, I had debt when we got married. We were paying it off. Oops, there was an accident. There was an emergency. We have the debt. Let's just put a little more on there and we'll pay it off until we figure out what we're doing. And now we get 0% interest cards. And oops, there's an emergency. We'll put a little on there. And our daughter's in the hospital. We'll put that on the credit card because it's at 0%. And eventually we realized, because we were thinking, well, we're only going to spend on a credit card if there's an emergency.
And they were legitimate emergencies.
They were legitimate emergencies, but there's a point where we came to say no emergency is big enough to put it on a credit card. No emergency.
We have
is
to
big
figure
enough.
out how to get $1,000 in savings.
Yeah, and the thing with our daughter, we transferred that from a hospital account to a credit card because we were going to be responsible and pay off the money at the 0% interest. But the hospital would have negotiated a cheaper rate because they do that with cash pay people, and we didn't know that. And we had some family who had a similar problem to us with their daughter having hospital emergency, and the hospital looked at their income and just completely wrote off the bill. Well, we paid that all there. And I'm not saying that the hospital is responsible for that, because they're not. It's our bill. But if they had chosen to do that for us, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot by continuing to use the credit even when we said it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And there was
we thought we were doing the right thing. I mean, we thought we were doing the right thing. We thought we were being responsible. We didn't know that the hospital would write it down or write off some of it.
Or give you a discount.
Mainly
because they overcharge insurance companies, and so they give cash people a cash discount. We didn't know that. So we just paid the highest price.
Yeah.
And, there was another thing I was thinking.
And we chose not to go bankrupt during this whole time. I had just started, back then it was called Not Just Beans, but I had just, in the midst of this, I had just wrote the book and had started promoting the book as a way to save money and get out of debt. And I didn't want to go bankrupt. And here I am, an expert in saving money, getting out of debt, and I'm going bankrupt. And so
this is before we said we paid off debt, doing all that, by the way.
Yeah.
But I know the other thing I was thinking is there's a point where we kept saying, well, if it's an emergency, we have to do that. And we realized there's an emergency all the time. And eventually we came to that point of saying, no emergency is big enough to put anything on a credit card. No emergency is ever big enough. And then we finally realized, wait, we have this emergency, like every month there's $300 worth of emergencies, unexpected expenses. And every month we say, oh my goodness, it's an emergency. Look at this unexpected expense. And one day we said, maybe we need a budget that we know there's going to be $300 worth of unexpected expenses a month. In fact, why don't we say there are going to be let's budget for $500 worth. And then if it's only $300, we have that extra money,
savings
to do something else with, like either save it or pay off debt.
Yep. And so that's how we started then finally getting savings. Was we got our debt paid off. We realized, okay, every month there's an emergency of some sort. Tooth breaks, doctor bill, something.
Car has a problem, something goes wrong.
That kind of thing. And so we started saving that money. And then after we finally got to the point where we said we have $1,000 in savings, we are never going below that. And if we go below that because it's an emergency, we have to build it right back up. And from that point, we've been on the trajectory of always becoming rich because we didn't have to live on a dime. We could take our dimes that we had saved and use those for the emergencies.
Yes. There's one other thing I was going to mention that's really important to this process. We realized that Tara was much more responsible with spending. Like if I had a credit card, we realized that she was a lot more responsible with spending, and I was a lot better at the accounting part, like keeping track of the checkbook and all that, and the bank balance. So we kind of agreed between us, that's your thing and this is my thing. So I won't spend and you won't do the books. and it
You
worked
didn't
out.
want me to.
Well, what happened is one time Tara wrote
I'm awful with.
she wrote a check
bookkeeping.
for rent or something like $400 or $500 as a deposit, and we ended up having a chain reaction bounce at the bank, and we had to go there and we explained it to them, and they didn't charge us the fees,
Yeah.
and they fixed the whole thing. But after that, when we got our $1,000 saved up, even before we had the $1,000 saved up, I had $100 in the account, and I was like, I'm going to say that when the account has $100, it has zero.
Yeah.
And I wrote on the check thing it was zero, so Tara would see zero.
Yeah.
And then eventually we worked our way up to having $1,000 in there, and at that point it's zero. So if the account goes down to $1,000, it has zero.
Yeah.
And that way we never ever bounced anything ever again.
Yeah. And that was just my brain fog from my chronic fatigue syndrome.
Right,
my
but what I'm
brain
saying,
doesn't
though-
work. And so we came up with a system
Yeah,
that
that
worked.
together.
Yeah.
Where I recognize my weak spot is not spending the money, and her weak spot is
It's math.
it's math. And between us, we just developed this plan,
Yeah.
agreeing that we had the same goal,
Yeah. Yeah. So
and we never kept our money separate.
no, we never can. And I don't think anyone who's married should. I mean, there's few rare remarriage type situations possibly, but if you're married, your money needs to be together, and you need to be.
If you don't think that that's a good idea, then you probably shouldn't marry that person.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, but that's a whole nother
That's a
video.
whole other story.
But anyway, that is how we had debt. That's kind of the short version of how we got out of it. Now we're gonna be having a series of where we walk step by step of how to get out of debt and how to start building up savings. We just wanted to give you our story so that you can know, okay, this is where we've been. We have been there. I get nasty comments every single day. Well, you don't know, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I do. We've been homeless. We have lived on $300 a month,
We've not been able
$600
to
a month.
afford a refrigerator to keep our food in.
Yeah.
We've not been able to buy a bed.
Yeah, or a couch or anything.
Yes.
And flea-ridden couches I've had to clean. So we have been there, and we know you can do it. That's why I get so snippy. I'm sorry. I apologize right now. But I have zero patience because we have been there. And so we're telling our story now. You guys, Penny Pinch and Mama, you've heard Mom's story and how I grew up. But now the things that Mike and I have done. But this one is going to be starting a series on debt
And we're
and
going
how
to
to dig out of debt and get it paid off.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We are going to go step by step and try to look at little things.
Yep.
So that you can kind of get a sense for how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
This video's purpose is mainly to say, in sort of the most compact way we could, sort of how globally we did it. But then we want to go in and show you step by step, because everyone thinks their problem is different, but they're really not.
Yep. All right, guys, please visit us at livingonadime.com. We have thousands of articles on our website and thousands of YouTube videos on our channel that you can just start perusing and get tips right now to get you started. Please visit us at livingonadime.com to find all of those, and we will see you guys next time.